is newer stuff that you can pretty much get online or at your local fish stores and then be able to bring in and set up in your own tank. So that simplifies it. It doesn't require CO2. CO2 just kind of helps the plants grow. Does anyone here run CO2 in any of their tanks? Okay, so perfect. You'll see when you run it, you'll see a difference in the shape, the color, the texture of the plants. They're much more vibrant. So if you ever want to take that next step, it's a pretty easy step, and it's not very hard to do. CO2's there's a lot of negativity associated with setting up a CO2, but it's actually a very easy process. And once you get going, it's very, very straightforward. So the size of the tank is actually something that I always start off talking about. It's very important. In terms of an aquascape, you want something that has a nice dimension. Generally, I like having something that has a decent length, and not terribly high. You don't want something that's, you get another 6 to 8 inches, a real tall tank. Problem is, when you have a tall tank, you can't project light in. The bottom of your light never hits the bottom of the substrate, and the plants tend to get leggy. They start growing so that the inner nodes in between your plants start extending. So I tend to not go with really tall tanks. I also like having something that has a little bit more depth, front to back. This is, I believe, 16 inches front to back. I can't remember exactly. I have a 60P, which is a variant of this, a variation of this one, and it's only 12 inches back from front to back. And it's sometimes a little challenging. The extra depth that this tank has is a huge bonus for me. And you'll see why when I start messing with the wood and adding the hardscape. That extra depth really makes a huge difference. Now, for basic aquascaping, someone just setting up something that's really simple, I like using the rule of thirds. And what I've done here in the front, it's kind of hard to see, but I've taken this tank and using a marker, split this thing into 3 sections. 3 sections horizontal and 3 sections vertical. And what you're doing is you're looking for areas where it crosses as your main focal point. So when you're setting up your hardscape, your eye naturally is going to want to go to those focal points. This is something that is a standard artistic design principle that a lot of people use in photography, in painting, and things like that. So they just kind of, Takahashi Amano utilized this concept and actually made it so that it's set up in an aquascape. So what I've done is separate it in different types of wood. We're primarily using spider wood today. It's one of my favorite. It's easy to use. It has a lot of nice texture, you got a lot of little pieces of branches sticking up off the main piece. And what that does is as the plants grow in, you have texture of these little pieces coming off the main aquascape, and it builds character for your aquascape. Now, I usually have a stash of wood at my house that my wife complains about. It's 3 crates full, and when I mean crates, I mean like big crates stuffed in my garage. And the same thing with hardscape. You can never have too little or too much. I brought a crate of hardscape for you guys to use today, but I probably have about 8 to 10 of those crates at home as well, and of different types. So it's stuff that I've accumulated through the years. And what you'll find is that you reuse a lot of the stuff, but you tend to go back to the pieces that have some of the best character. And the only way to do that is buying a lot of it, and then just kind of going through what you want and figuring out which pieces work best. So it's much better pricing now. I think most places you can get this for $2 to $3 a pound now. When I was buying it, was starting out like $6 to $8 a pound. And so I spent an enormous amount of money trying to find my pieces, I'll say. So let's go ahead and get started here. First thing I usually do is, we got this thing split up. I normally don't right on the front of the tank, but I just kind of want to give you guys an idea of what I'm doing here. Now, this aquaswell, or at least the stuff that we use in terms of aquascaping, I always use aquaswell in our tanks. This is a commercial, our commercial gravel, not really gravel, a substrate that has all the nutrients, the organics that plants need. It's everything that you need for this. But the best part of this aqua soil is that it buffers. So your pH will get buffered down to a lower pH, which is ideal for a lot of the biochemical reactions that you're going to be using, that the plants are going to utilize in terms of photosynthesis. But it's also a great environment for bacteria. The beneficial bacteria in aqua soil is they utilize a lot of the organics and a lot of the nutrients and stuff to actually help your plants grow, and that's really critical. You have stuff like Chem fluoride or EcoComplete. I can't remember who makes that. Fluval stratum exists, but EcoComplete and Chem fluoride are gravels. They call them substrate, but they're not substrates. They're gravels. They don't have any nutrients. They have what they call a cation exchange coefficient, which binds minerals, but it's not really that great. It's very, very inert. And so I've always had a little beef with that. And so I like their stuff for certain things, but I don't like it in terms of how they talk about it as a substrate. So the first thing I'll do is I will put a little substrate in to start building the base. And what I'm going to do here is initially add enough substrate so that I can put my main pieces that I'm going to use today. But eventually what I'm going to end up doing is this is going to get moved to the back, and the plants are going to be put in the back here. They're going to be, you're basically not going to utilize the substrate in the front of the tank. We're going to add a sand front, sand foreground. And the reason I do that is I'm not a big fan of foreground plants. I'll put some in here that are fairly easy to use, but generally speaking, foreground plants are a pain in the rear because you got to maintain them. Once they grow in, you can't just let them go. You actually have to go in and mow them down, let them grow back, mow them down, let them grow back. And when you do that, it creates a huge mess. Yes, Monte Carlo has to be mowed. Any of the hair grass has to be mowed. Glossostigma has to be mowed. And you basically will take it right down to the substrate. I basically go in with the scissor when I have it. I cut it down so that you just see the tops of the stems right at the surface of the substrate, and it comes back pretty nice. But in that time, when you do the mowing, it just makes a huge mess, and it gets everywhere in the tank, and it can create a huge mess in the tank. All right, so we have this substrate in, and this is used primarily to build the base initially. And what I had several pieces, but I found this piece of wood was actually the best piece in here. I've broken off some of the tips so that it will fit in this tank. It has a very natural positioning so that let's see, I'm doing a triangular aquascape. You can't really see that, can you? No. But this aquascape is going to be a triangular aquascape, and it's one of my favorite types to set up because it's easy to maintain, it's easy to set up. What you'll find is your main focal point is going to be right at this cross right here, and you have a minor focal point down here. And we'll have stone and stuff like that once we set this up to kind of augment that aquascape, to augment the focal point. And plants will also help in terms of really helping that focal point kind of stick out. So this piece kind of has a very natural shape and natural direction. In addition to having a triangular shape going down the tank, I also like having a triangular shape going across the tank. And that gives you a very natural design so that you have a slope going to the corner of the tank. Now, one of the important things about setting up aquascape is having open space. That's really critical. It's a principle, at least it gives tension between having aquascape and having a place where you have open space for fish and other plants to access to kind of augment the tank and aquascape. Okay, so when doing this backward is going to be a little challenging. Okay, let's see. Take a look here. Sorry, guys. Let's see. All right, and so I'm already seeing a problem right here. What I'll do is take that piece off, because then I can actually, by doing that, it has a little better fit into that little space right there. So I'm looking for a place where I can actually nestle this wood into the stone as a natural kind of a natural area where it fits together. In nature, when you look at a piece of wood or you look at how wood goes across stone, it kind of works into the crevices of the stone. And that's what you're trying to do here, is trying to fit these pieces of stone so that it looks like it's a natural, it's naturally there in the first place. Also, the reason I like doing that, and this is the next step of the process, is one of the things that that a lot of people have problems with when they first set the tank is the wood floats. So there's a method that I use that allows us to kind of glue this stuff to the driftwood, the wood and the stone. And I would recommend you guys get gloves when you use this stuff. I used to not wear gloves, and I would have glue all over my hands for a week. Always a little weird going to work with glue sticking all over your fingers.
Is it safe for kids?
Yes. So I will tell you, once the glue sets, I usually actually, so when I first set up a tank, I don't add fish in. Probably the first month, I don't put fish in of any kind. Maybe at about 2 to 3 weeks, I'll add an algae crew. I'll start adding some algae eaters in. But in terms of the fish that go in here, it doesn't go into about 2 months in. And then at that point, you'll know kind of what your plants are, how it looks, and you can kind of figure out what kind of fish you want to put in. This is actually the perfect tank for a pisto. I like having these types of tanks for epistogrammas. All right, so this is a little trick I saw online several years ago, and I've been using it quite a bit for my aquascapes. So this is cigarette filters, and it's just, forget what it is. It's like it's polycellulose, or I can't remember exactly what what it is in terms of its structure. But what I have here is a little thing of baking soda. And it's basically, you take that little piece there and mix it into the baking soda. Okay? And you look at a place where it naturally fits together. So like right over here, the wood is sitting on the stone. So I'll put that in that position. Take super glue. Hopefully this has a hole in it still. Okay, good. So this is liquid super glue. This is not gel super glue, which I'll be using, but in a different spot. Take the liquid super glue. Hit that pretty good with a decent amount. And just kind of hold it down. Okay. Can you guys see the little wisps of smoke going up? Okay. So the people in the front can see this little wisp of smoke kind of going up. It's basically reacting with the baking soda and the polymer that's in that filter. And in about a minute, it's going to harden to the point where it won't move. It'll stick, and it sticks really, really well. I've taken pieces of stone, added the wood. I can kind of shake it around, lift it up, shake it around, and it won't come off. So it's a pretty cool little concept that I think some of the Asian aquascapers started this about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a cool little trick.
And you said you use liquid, not gel?
Yeah, liquid, because you want it to kind of go into the fibers.
Do you use a certain type of baking soda? 'Cause there's like
No, just store-bought. I forgot about this. I meant to add. Yeah.
I saw it was like
Yeah, it is. So I add a little soil in there. I don't like, with like this one, it's not too bad. Using different kind of stones like lava, I don't like having the white from the glue. And so what I'll do instead is I'll mix it and crumble it with a lot of aqua soil, and that gives it a more natural color. It's just kind of a little trick that I started doing years ago. And the other way to do it is add a little glue to the spot that you just hit, and then just take aqua swell from there and crumble it over it.
Can you get it off the rock down the road?
Yeah, so I basically just take a, let's see, where is it? I use a little mason hammer and just take the spot and chip it, and it pops right off.
And where do you get cigarette filters?
I got these on Amazon. I mean, this bag was maybe $2, $3, so it's really, really cheap. Yeah. All right. So there's 2 spots right now that we've kind of. There's another spot right here that I want to make sure that the wood is attached to. Come on, there we go. And I can already start seeing the. There it is. There's the smoke right there. See it just kind of starting up. So that, once that gets in there, you'll see that this stuff is actually pretty hard. And I use your cheapo chopstick from the grocery store or from one of the Chinese restaurants. So there you go. It's not moving anymore. And that'll hold it down when you're doing your aquascapes and gluing stuff to it. It helps you, once you fill it up, the wood doesn't just go right up.
Would you also do that between rocks, or would you
Yeah, no, I don't usually like gluing it between rocks because a lot of times I use that crevice in the rocks for plants. This is primarily just to hold the wood down. Now, right now, where's the stone I had? Okay. Sorry. So I have a lot of different types, a lot of pieces here. This is Siriu, which it does have carbonates in it, so it will leach out some, it's a calcium carbonate-based stone, so it will leach carbonates into your water. So you want to keep your water changes pretty consistent in the first couple of weeks so that it moderates that a little bit. At this point, we will start moving this back. Okay. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I use Siriu a lot is I use RO water. I reconstitute my water. The water in Chicago is not great. And it's especially not great in my neighborhood. For some reason, the aquifers, I get fed from 4 different aquifers, and they vary all during the summer and the winter. So the water's never consistent. Shoot, that just popped off. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, that's not good.
So when you said a lot of water changes for the first couple of weeks, will your pH not continue to rise over time? Will all the calcium leach out and it won't come out anymore?
It'll eventually moderate out, yeah. And so what this does, the cool thing about Siriu is that if once it leaches, and if you let it just kind of go, it forms this crust on the outer surface, and it stops leaching. So I tend to let it kind of leach out as much as I can, so that I can get that, that change in the cage, the fluctuation of the cage to kind of level out. And you'll also find that your aqua soil will also take up some of the KH and stuff, and so the aqua soil is great because it does help to kind of moderate and kind of maintain a very balanced pH.
What is that pH that will tend to, in the long run?
In the long run, it'll settle about between 6.5 to 6.8. Ooh, geez, shoot.
Is that specific to that stone, or is that most permanent rocks?
Most carbonate rocks will do that, unfortunately.
Well, I meant like settle over time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry? No, I do, but this is fine. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I stuck my glove on it. I'm sorry? Yeah. No, it's the whole rock. It's all counts. It's like interspersed in amongst in amongst the stone. I've broken into it. The veins, I don't really notice having any additional carbonate.
Because I've noticed with mine, my veins get a little more acidic, that the veins actually just disappear.
Ooh,
Just like crevices where the veins used to be.
that's kind of cool. I hadn't noticed that with mine.
You'll have like really cool lines in the rock.
Okay. All right.
Method for acid washing it to bring out.
Yeah, you bring out colors. I used to do that a lot. Not the safest thing to do, because you have to use muriatic acid, which is hydrochloric acid, and it's. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, come on! This keeps popping off. I'm sorry?
You have rocks that make the water pH go up.
Yep.
Is there any pre-treatment you can do to the rocks to stop that, or you just got to get rid of it?
You just kind of, well, there isn't really a pretreatment. It's just water changes pretty much that will help kind of mitigate some of that KH change. A lot of the calcium carbonate based rocks will do that, unfortunately, and they're kind of frustrating to work with sometimes. And that's the reason I use like a lot of Oko stone, which is this stuff right here.
Also dragonstone?
Dragonstone, yeah. I'm sorry? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's a word that sells. Look at all the dragons and fish on them.
How true is like the vinegar or pH dropper test to test your?
So that one actually is not that accurate. It's some rocks don't actually react to the vinegar, but they're carbonate based. Yeah, it's kind of, that was something I figured out when I was testing some kind of elephant stone, which is a very similar look and coloration to it, but it's different in terms of it doesn't have the sharp edges, it's more rounded, a more weathered look. That stuff does not react to vinegar, but I know that it's carbonate, and it's because it jacks my KH up really, really quickly. All right. No, it actually does not make the tanks murky, which is nice. Yeah. So when you first set up a tank, the first couple of weeks is really important in terms of setting up, in terms of doing water changes. Part of it, and part of the reason for that is that it helps kind of moderate changes in the tank. This substrate is rich enough that it's going to release a lot of nutrients and stuff in the tank. And if you don't keep up with the water changes, you'll start getting algae pretty quickly. So I tend to do water changes every other day for the first 2 weeks. I mean, and it's quick. I mean, it's drain, fill, drain, fill. You don't even mess with the tanks. You just drain it and fill it.
You're doing like 80, 90%?
100%. I mean, some people do 50% and it works. You just got to make sure you keep up on it. Now, this is not actually that bad. This substrate is actually one of my favorite to work with, the UNS Contra Swell, because it's not really bad about leaching stuff. What's really bad about it is Amazonia, which is a ADA product, and that stuff is horrendous. The amount of ammonia that comes out of that tank is really bad, out of the substrate, and it's literally every single day, 100% for about a month. People swear by it. I hate it, because I'm lazy. I like my fish. I also don't like having to have that kind of effort put into it for something that really that doesn't require that much work. This shouldn't be that much work.
How
So,
cloudy is this going to be?
It actually doesn't. It's so the way when I start getting ready to plant, you'll find that where the plants go, you don't have to do like vacuuming in the front. I mean, you do very little vacuuming of the substrate and soil. You actually don't. You shouldn't. It'll actually disturb the substrate base. This is another product that I use. They're super. Forget what the company is. It's a saltwater company. I can't remember what its name of it now. I have a small container. I'll pull it out later. But this stuff is great because it's super thick. Yeah, it's a super glue. And for whatever reason, yeah, that one's breaking loose. But I'm gonna also put it right here.
So what you're doing now, you're moving in a different spot, go ahead and move those other rocks on the other side, kind of keep balance, or?
Yeah.
That's just straight up, there's no cigarette,
No, there's not on this one.
Will you cover up those spots that are showing more with
Yep.
plants?
Yep.
plants that might be tilted before we can break in the crumb of that stuff.
Do you think I have a problem with that glue holding? I have a saltwater tank, so I'm always gluing in oil frags, and I find that the thicker super glue.
It takes a little while, but I use this. This is like an accelerant, and it sets the glue pretty quickly. This is another one that I use a lot of when I do the first initial setup. It smells though. I hate the smell.
Explain this a lot, Jim.
So I actually do a lot of hobbing, like with miniatures, so I use that instant setup.
Yeah,
I have found it makes your super glue more brittle though.
it does. Yeah, and over time it'll actually kind of flake and break off and snap and stuff. All right, so actually don't like that piece there. Don't like that piece. Okay.
Do you find aquascaping with like a more like sand type substrate or gravel is easier?
Well, so you'll see what I'm going to do here in a second. We are going to put sand in the front, and that's primarily just so that it's easier for me to it's easier for you guys to maintain. Having a foreground is awesome if you have the time to kind of maintain it. If you don't, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot more work than you really need to put into aquascaping. Okay. Okay, so this is pretty close. Oh yeah, yeah. Home Depot special for $2. So it's bulk resupply. It's that really thick super glue, and I use it a lot when I'm doing initial set. This is a special brush from Japan. It was given to me by a friend of mine, and it was something like an $80 brush, which I thought was just ridiculous. It's like,
So in professional aquascaping, it's not desirable at all to have any of the darker dirt substrate showing below your sand, or is that a choice?
it depends. Like if you're doing a full foreground, the substrate you would need the substrate. The sand's too inert to really do anything. But what I like to do is set the hardscape down and then start working in the foreground so that it's primarily just sand at that point.
Some people cap their soil too.
Yeah, and I don't like that, and the reason is because the minute you cap it, it floats up. The substrate's soft, it's lighter than the sand, and what happens as you're moving, you're doing vacuuming, you're cleaning up, or if you're pulling plants out, that substrate just floats right back up to the top, and then you have to figure out a way to get that out of the substrate.
What do you think of putting aqua soil in like mesh bags?
I do that. Yeah, I didn't do it here. I have gone in and purchased like these little mesh bags, and I'll put them in sections, especially like right here where there's an interface between the rock and the front in the foreground, that's a great spot for that because it doesn't bleed over into the front of the tank.
Can you use like the sands and dirt qualities to control an aquascape if you're doing like something co-maintenance?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, what I've done there and then is just basically used a really small layer of aquaswell, and primarily where the stem plants are going to be. What you're gonna see is here when I'm working on this one. This is primarily just for the stem plants and background plants. It's not for your rhizome plants. It's not for any kind of like this. This will be a great spot for a lot of your crypts and stuff like that because it's rich and they need a real rich environment for it to grow.
When you do the substrate in the back, or the aquasol in the bags, do you just put like a dirt substrate over the top of it?
No, I actually use soil. I use aquasol because what you're going to find is, especially if it's put in a section like right here, when you put plants in there, it'll grow into that aquasol. And then you basically it'll hold things in place, but it's also a great place for you to have the soil kind of feed your plants and stuff.
So in essence, it'll grow as far as there is on the soil.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, once the soil, once your tank is matured, what you're going to find is that even stuff like sand will actually start, or your gravels will start building up a mulch layer that's going to be real rich for your plants. But it takes a while. I mean, it'll take probably a good 6 months before I can find before it actually starts building up enough of a layer that it's going to be really, really happy. Okay. Okay, that's good. Just like cheap mesh bags, like black. I use black ones.
Black carbon bags, basically.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. Just it's inexpensive and they're easy to work with. So
And then I noticed you're going through and you're kind of fitting smaller rocks into the crevices, are you naturally trying to make sure your rocks are fitting around
Yep.
your roots so it looks like it's growing?
Yep, exactly. And that's the, so I'm doing this very quickly, but in general, it'll take me, for an aquascape like this, it'll take me, if I'm taking my time, about 2 months to get the hardscape set. And I'm very deliberate about it, especially if I'm setting something up that's more like a contest variety or a contest type of tank. It'll go about 2 months before I actually start planting and filling the tank. And every day I'll sit there and look at it and change this, tinker that, move this, add that, and it takes a while to get to that point. Yeah, and it's bad because I want to fill the tank really, really, really bad.
You're obviously not an adult with ADD.
No, well, so I have to force myself not to do that.
We also talked earlier, I noticed that you're kind of separating. Are you intentionally forming a barrier where your rock is essentially wall to wall?
Yeah,
On the front?
yeah.
Is that also to hold in your soil?
It's to hold on to soil also. Yeah, and that's one of the keys is,
Your retaining wall right now, then, basically.
yeah, pretty much build a retaining wall for your soil. And that's one of the keys to this is that you're building up this layer so that you can, that when you plant, it's going to look a little bit more natural in the plant when it's planted. I don't like that piece.
I got a question about wood in general.
Yep.
We're using ghost wood or faded spider wood, and we first start out, and the wood starts getting this film around it.
Yep, that's very natural.
That's a natural thing. Just leave it alone.
Yep, leave it alone. That is a very natural process in the maturation of the wood. It's a fungal bloom actually, and it takes about 2 weeks for it to resolve. I don't do anything in the tank. I'll go in there with a brush and scrub it off and do a vacuum of it, and it'll come back in a couple of weeks. But by scrubbing it and taking it off, it goes a little faster. But it's going to be there for about 2 weeks, and it really takes a little time just to kind of let it resolve. Yeah, it doesn't do anything to your tank. No, not at all. It's totally harmless. Okay, so I have most of this done in terms of hardscape. So we'll get to the planting here in a second, but there's another little trick that I use in my aquascaping. This is just your basic foam from the filters, and what I will do is add it to the corners before I add the last layer of my soil. And the reason I do that is it helps to prevent soil popping over into your front of your scape. Yeah. No, not just the places I think, yeah, the bigger pieces, the bigger places that I think it's gonna start flowing out from, I will add it in there. Like this has a little crevice right here that's a natural spot for it to wanna come out. Do you use polyfill for that? You can, but it's white.
Well, more about the interior.
Yeah, you could, yeah. And I've done that. I've used polyfill and other types of stuff like that. And in fact, I have polyfill. I just like the black because it tends to help it kind of disappear, and you don't see that stuff kind of popping out. Yeah, it doesn't look unnatural.
I don't have extra black filters, but I have a whole lot of polyfill.
Okay, there we go. And so the other thing is I have a lot of tools. Get yourself some good quality tools. These are my crummy ones I bring when I'm doing an aquascape initially. When I'm planting, I tend to have some really nice ones that I go to as my go-to tools. Great place to find them. Instead of going on Amazon or someplace like that, go on eBay. Look for surgical scissors. A lot cheaper. The surgical scissors are super sharp, and they're great quality. They retain their sharpness, their edge and stuff. And because a lot of times those are used, which, you know, it's still going to be less expensive than buying new. I'm sorry? Oh yeah. I mean, these are not. These are not. These are Tamsco ones that we are allowing. I brought some for people to use today. But I have surgical scissors that I have from work that they throw out. At a certain point, the scissors aren't sharp enough to cut the little animals that we do our testing on, and they throw them out. So I take those and bring them home, and you know they're perfectly sharp for just doing your basic aquascaping, cutting plants, things like that. Okay, so at this point we are pretty close to being done with the hardscape.
With the medical forceps, are they longer than the ones you buy?
Not necessarily. So like this is a medical one. These are actual aquascaping ones. So that's the only thing. The tweezers are the pin sets are a little harder to find. Okay, so.
So having a little bit of that substrate in the front's not, it's just the stuff that kind of comes through the rocks. That
Yeah, and the reason I do that for the front is because I'm going to plant some stuff in the front here, and I want that aqua swell to be there for the plants. Yeah, so Tamsco is a company. Yeah, he's got some nice stuff. Come on. This is red flint.
We do still have hope that we actually got that. The Aqua World in the city is closing. And it's 50% off. So we're 75 to 90%. 75 to 90%. always love some bags of this.
This is awesome stuff. It's pretty clean already, and I love the color. Yes, and that's another reason I like this. Is a lot of aquascapers use stark white, and I'm just not a fan of that. It seems very unnatural to me. Come on. Well, I didn't want to cut this open, so. There we go. All right. There we go. See how much is in there. I'm sorry?
Let me know if you want me to move it back.
See. I think that should be enough.
All of it, you want it out?
Okay, yeah. All right.
Anyone taking this minute, if anybody does not have their name in the hat that says should participate in the Aquascape off following this, I'm up right now, get your name in the hat. I'm gonna draw in about 10 minutes.
How many kids are there?
12?
Two kids? Yeah.
All right.
I had to put a lot of fluid strata on top of my pool filter, stark white sand.
Oh, no.
Corys are the other problem.
They are. Cores are notorious for pulling stuff out of their tank, out of the substrate. Okay, so I see a couple places where I have, like there's a big gap in the middle. So what we will do there is there's some plants in there. Okay. I think we are set in terms of the substrate and the sand. Now, one of the things I always emphasize when I'm setting up a tank is straight line across the front. That builds depth, and it's one of the things that a lot of judges emphasize as a very key component of someone's aquascape. Okay, so we had a huge variety of plants right now. I'm gonna add a little water into this first. Well, not yet, actually. So first thing I do is I plant the rhizome plants, the stuff that kind of goes in between the crevices of the wood and the stone. I don't plant anything else until I have those in place because it takes time for the glue to set. From that point, I'll plant forward to the back. Foreground is the next step after this. So I got a lot of really cool plants here.
Plants, do any of these plants in CO2?
No, I try to maintain stuff that don't require CO2. Bulbitis, this is actually a mini version. So this is one of the plants that I really love. Gives a lot of natural shape to a tank right away. Okay, as you guys can see, it's huge. It can get really big, but it'll give a lot of oomph in the tank right away. So where is that? Okay, so this is another thing I've been doing a lot recently. This is lead weight. And I started using this about a year ago. It's a lot easier to work than glue. I'm trying to glue big chunks of wood together. So I'll run the lead weight in between the rhizomes. So each of these will have like a rhizome on the end. I'll run them between the rhizomes to give it some weight. And then just,
Long-term risk to the livestock?
no, there's not.
Did fish get lead poisoning from that?
Nope.
Is it actual lead or are you just calling it lead?
It's not actual lead, but it's,
Can you use actual lead?
you can, but I mean, it's a lot Actual lead, they don't sell it very cheap anymore. This is kind of like a polymer. It's not polymer, but like a mix of different types. I'm sorry? It's not this, I don't know for sure. I actually am not positive. No, that one is one that I wouldn't use. Yeah. This I just got online from Amazon. A lot of my stuff I get on Amazon because it's easy. There's a lot of choices. So this one will set kind of into the crevice behind the wood, and this will give it a lot of shape right away. There's a couple pieces here that we'll also do.
Does yours, wait, do you own that plant like at your house, like that for the
I'm sorry?
bulbs? Do you own that plant?
Oh yeah. This is all stuff from my home.
Does it grow quick for you?
It grows faster than I want it to. I'll put it that way.
So you don't attach that in any way other than just the lead?
Yeah, I don't. So one of the things they tell you not to do with the rhizome is to bury it. It starts rotting. But what they also don't tell you is that the roots love that nutrient. And so what I'll do is I'll just set it right on top with the lead. The lead weight will hold it down, but the nutrients will feed that bulbitis. So it's a great plant in terms of, it's a great way of doing it this way in terms of feeding your plants and getting them established very, very quickly. If you glued it, you're preventing, what I found is that you're preventing the roots from kind of going out and attaching to the wood and attaching to the stuff. And what the other thing that you'll find is that this stuff, when it sends the roots down, it'll attach. When you pull this plant up to prune it, it'll pull all that substrate up with it. So it's pretty surefire way of getting the plants in real quickly. Okay, this is way. So this is another really cool one. I love this plant, needle leaf Java fern. How are we looking on time? Let's see.
So it's 6 to 11.
Oh, geez.
What I'll do, but you have, I mean, you've got the total of 3 hours of time for folks. So what I'll do is draw names at 11.
Okay.
And scapers, like I said at the beginning, expected to stay till at least 1. You probably wouldn't get feedback right at 1. That's when we'll end the scape off. But if you have to leave at some point after that and you don't have the feedback yet, I'll have a future mass meetings.
Does the weather get the clouds or something?
So we're doing a scape off. So you are getting feedback at whatever level the scaper is at. Your prize is
Beautiful knowledge that they
the prize is the knowledge
No,
and
the
part of
prize
our
is
feeling,
getting a 200.
but also you get the opportunity.
Yeah, that's a
to get $250.
nice tank.
You get
I like that idea.
the UNS tanks, which by the way I should mention are donors. So Art of Aquaria donated the tanks with UNS. And the driftwood, a lot of it was donated by SR Aquascaping, which is a great company up in Chicago. You can find them online. They have a lot of what you
They got a
see
lot of cool stuff.
pieces. I know Melanie is a huge fan too. Melanie couldn't be here today. She said already promised to be at another event.
I'll have to give her a little grief about that too.
Yeah, well, we had to change the date on this. Originally, this was scheduled for spring, and the building wasn't available. And other donors, Oase, the filters are en route right now. So luckily, we don't actually need them. It's better than the tanks being a little late. So those will be here, and everybody that decides to take the tank home, those are donated by Oase. And I think I got those.
Okay.
The tanks are 4 gallons, so UNS goes by the number of centimeters width, which is a more European way. Like, you know, you read European stuff, I'll say like, I used a 60-centimeter tank. It's like, how many gallons was it? Or at least give me liters that I can convert. So this is a 60, right? And I was trying to figure out what 60 was. It's not liters, like 60 liters is not 20 gallons. But it's
Centimeter tank, yeah.
It is, and I looked it up actually. It's, and now I don't remember, but it's 14 and 14 on the side. So it's a cube on the side, and then the front was just under 24 inches. It's very similar to a 20 high.
That's what I have. So, I'm gonna back to hardscape for a second. Is there ever any concern about like some sort
So you shouldn't have any issues. What I've done in the past, if it's a really big piece, I put, what is it, the light diffuser? It's like the gridded light diffuser, and I'll put a section under the tank, and that just protects it.
Under the glass or inside the glass?
Inside the glass itself, yeah.
And I would think on the rimless, you're directly flat
And-
on your
Yep.
left neck usually sits less.
Yeah, so this tank, you'll see it comes with a foam mat. And what it does is it'll level out any kind of imperfections in the table or inside. And that's pretty critical because if you were to, like me, drop a piece of stone on your tank and crack it, having that grid helps, but also because of their points on the stone, it'll put pressure points across the stone. That mat helps level that out. Okay. So normally, I just stuff things into crevices when I start planting. And you just look for natural areas that it looks like it should go, where it's going to grow.
Would this be like a?
I'm sorry? Yeah. I don't use a glue, Anubius.
No, it's fine. I just didn't know what plant. I didn't see it.
Oh,
You had your
oh,
palm.
sorry.
You had it in your palm and then you stuck it in. I was just wanting to know if that was over the saw or not.
So they're just holding more by friction and the different.
Little cracks and crevices, yeah. I mean, that's the reason I do that is I found as I'm planting these guys, when you're using a lot of glue, it actually inhibits the growth and it inhibits it from starting to kind of take effect, or just to kind of attach. It keeps the roots from actually attaching to the surfaces a lot of times. Okay. I know I had some more. Let's see, here we go. Okay. Bucephalandra. This is another one of my favorites.
You've seen moves like this.
This came out of my tank that it's, and you can't tell from it right now, but the color on this one, when it sends out new growth and good light, and that it's decent light there, it's red, it's burgundy red, and it's a beautiful, beautiful plant.
Do you keep these tanks topless?
I don't put any tops on my tanks, no. That's one of the
So you
things.
just put the little like lip of the light that you use on it?
Yeah.
So I was just really wondering how like you do lighting.
I have, so a couple of my tanks have a hanging. It hangs on above it. Other tanks have just the little legs and stuff that sit on top of the tanks. And I got to tell, I do cheat a little bit. I use T5 still in some of my tanks. My main tank is still a T5, yeah. T5 fluorescence, because I can control the coloration. So I can really augment some of the colors and stuff in my tank.
So I would assume the color you have on those, that wouldn't stay with that unless you have a pretty intense light on one of these things, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this one actually, this came out of part of it came out of the lower tech tank, and it has this dark coloration. I forget what kind it was, and I hate that I can't remember it, but it was one of my favorite varieties, and I kept expanding it because I love this one. Yeah, see, if you want to send this around, you can see the red on this, that red on that bottom leaf right there. It's just, it pops.
It almost looks like a bigger beaver seed.
Okay.
And then Balin, even though these are largely low-tech plants, you
Yep.
have CO2 on those.
I do. I just like,
Which is gonna lead even for low-tech plants to better growth.
yes. I mean, you're going to find that with low-tech tanks, with lower-tech plants, even what having CO2, you're going to find that Anubias grows fast, Bucephalandra grows fast, your ferns grow super fast. So I can, like this, I can expand out Anubias, just a single one, into a big chunk in probably about a month's time. It'll put 3-4 different leaves every week for me.
Are most of your tanks heavily planted so you don't get hair algae?
Yep, I have. So my premise when I put a tank together is to have the tank about 75 to 80% planted. And you're going to find when I start planting, it's going to be really, really thick.
Do you have a preference on, like, I guess, the age of the plant? Like, do you want to put it in the way, like, you want it for
Not necessarily, because you'll see that some of the plants I get occasionally will be stuff that is immersed that will have to go fully transition. And stuff like, with stuff I have today, I don't need to, but a lot of the plants that I have, a lot of times I'll get from the store that I still need to have it completely immersed and transition. So I do. And the reason I do that in a new setup is because it helps to soak up nutrients. Okay. Well, I'm just trying to get a little water into the foreground.
You're starting to soak up. You're starting to darken up.
Okay, good.
Slowly but surely.
You trying to use more the top water plants for roots?
Yep. Yeah, I don't like water lettuce. I hate water lettuce. Oh, I hate it, Red. It tangles into my plants. I'll say it tangles into my stem plants, and it.
I just have a tank that grows it perfectly, so the only thing that is there is
Okay.
I was gonna say, this afternoon, we have a series of mini talks by NASA members, and I'm gonna show, they're all gonna be just about 10 minutes, 5 minutes of Q&A between. We've got 6 or 7 scheduled, on the schedule for the end. But I'm gonna be doing just a quick how you set up series. So it can be very confusing if you've never ordered it, and you're suddenly quick spend on a couple $100, and then you're
It
missing
can get
a small
expensive.
component
Yeah.
that you need. And it's really hard to kind of figure out unless you're spending a lot of money buying a CO2 kit. So I'll show you like the different pieces you need to actually have. I ripped the setup off of my display.
So they purchased it last night. Yeah.
I just saw the thing. I didn't know.
Yep.
I didn't know you were cultivating at home. And saw that.
No. Okay.
This is the lead that I'm used to using.
Yeah, I use that a lot. I'm sorry?
Do you have a stem plant that you like the most? Like,
So I do. When I start out a tank, I almost always start out with the Rotala species. It's super fast grower. And it can fill in a tank very quickly. It's also easy to grow. You can pretty much any person can grow it.
how do you make sure uses that big and long?
So that, yeah, this is a big variety, so it'll tend to be it grows in very dense. Okay, so next thing I plant is mid-ground plants, and a lot of times I like to use like larger crypts. These will be great in terms of, I didn't get it. So you want to grab a hold of the roots, and then just kind of work it down into the soil. And it helps to have a good tweezer. One of the things about this tweezer is I have two different sets. I have a very fine one, and then I have a much thicker, heavier duty one. And the reason I do that is because it's with some of these that have larger root systems, it's a little tougher to get a hold of it with a pincette that's really fine. You can't get a hold of it quite as well unless you're just doing one or two in a certain spot. But
You're adding water by the road.
yes, I go stage-wise addition.
Doing it just as you're hitting higher elevation, you want some more moisture there? Or
Yep.
topping it off a little more?
Yeah. So a lot of people will actually plant it dry. I don't like doing that. I can't do that. I'm more like whenever I put plants in, if it's dry and I try to lift my tweezers up, the plants come up with the tweezers. And so having a little water kind of, what it does is when you put the plants in, it'll settle down over the plants.
So none of those, that 1/3 in the very back, it's not planted, it's just kind of.
It's sitting on top, yeah. Yep.
Also, when you fill up your tank
Yep.
and it gets all murky because the substrates are hanging out of this, is what you said, do you siphon it all back out and keep repeating the process until all that?
I don't do it. I do it a couple times just to get this dust settled. But maybe like twice. Won't necessarily need, we probably won't be able to do that here. Okay.
So with the richness of, the nutrients in that aqua soil, you have to keep in mind of
wanna go heavy root feeders, plants, column feeders, or not really in terms of the scheme?
So what you're going to find with the different varieties of plants, the rhizome-based plants don't require that. It's going to leach out and it'll feed the plants. But a lot of the richness of the soil, I primarily keep it in the back for the stem plants. I don't put it in the front unless I'm doing a foreground plant, and then I'll have it go all the way to the top. But it'll keep feeding the plants over time. It's a slow leach, especially with the contra soil. It's much better about that. It doesn't leach out really, really heavy at one time.
So, I don't use a lot of ferts and stuff like that, so I'm just gonna ask, how long is that tank, like, if we set this tank up today, started running today, how long is that soil gonna be good without me loading it full of fertilizers to keep it going?
I can usually go about 2 months, and I don't, at that point, I'll start adding a little bit of nutrients, but not heavy.
What do you do when you're adding, are you putting liquid or you put like?
Liquid. So let me qualify that. It varies a little bit now. There is a method now that doesn't utilize liquid. They're using root tabs, but the root tabs have to be very rich. They have to be very, they're a different variety. They tend to be a little heavier in nutrients. That one is a little different now, but I used to just add an all-in-one, like what is it, Thrive is one that I used to use, and it normally talks about 1 pump per 10 gallon. I have that in the first couple months, and then I start going up based on what the plants look like. You'll be able to see pretty quickly if your plants are doing okay, whether that's going to be something you need to do. Okay.
How do you judge how many tabs to put in? The only times I've used tabs are the only times I've got really bad algae.
Yeah, so I'm very lean on my tabs, and I also am very specific about the types that I use. I don't use just the standard types. I buy the ADA one because it's actually a little less. There's a little less of the nutrients in each of those tabs versus a standard like your Thrive. Yeah, they're overly rich. They tend to be a little too heavy in terms of nutrients. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is I'm planting. These are. This is tissue culture. It's kind of a mess right now.
You want a top of water or something?
I'm sorry?
You want a top of water?
Oh, I got it right here. This is good. I just want to clean it off a little bit. Okay. And so it comes in a gel. At least this one does. I get as much of the gel as I can out of it, and then I clean it off in a little bit of water. And this is where I go back to my fine pincets. And since I don't want an entire foreground, I'm going to primarily just plant at the base of each of at the stone where the natural crevices are, so that it forms like a little pocket.
Do you have to, is that like a high maintenance plant?
It isn't as much as, say, Monte Carlo, which
You're kind of using the roots of that like erosion control inside your tank.
I'm sorry? Yes.
That like erosion control.
Yep. So I'll put it into sections where I think it's going to help kind of prevent the soil from coming out. Yep. And that's a lot of my planting is based on that kind of premise. Is to
There's probably still 3 pieces of it. And then all that.
Anybody else put their names in that?
No.
So if people, when people buy their tanks, when
Yep.
they take them home, can you transport its setup?
It's too
Would
late.
you break it all down?
So I do. I transport. So I've transported tanks set up to another, like a show or something like that. What I do is I just drain the whole tank, and then I put paper towels over the plants, or paper towels and saran wrap or something like that.
Well, like for today, for instance, for people who buy their tanks, I was wondering, I was like, do they take them? I would assume you're not gonna break it all down.
No. So what you do is you'll get paper towels. You'll layer it over the tops of the plants, then saran wrap the top of it, and that'll keep the humidity in the tank.
And hopefully cut it in place too, and then dry slowly.
Yes. Yeah.
But you drain the water and then.
You drain the water completely. Yeah.
Get my hat all wet.
What it is.
And Bill,
Dale, just to clarify, that Oxel and the vent pressure it will basically turn it dirt?
Yes, it will. So I don't, they talk about replacing the Aquasol. That's a load of BS. I hate that they do that. I hate the companies that do that. What I do,
Let's do what again, I'm sorry.
that tell you that you have to replace your substrate. That's a load of crap.
Replace the nutrients, correct?
Well, you can replace the nutrients, but the other way that I do this is I will just, as you're pulling stem plants out, you're going to be pulling little bits of Aquasol out. I take a cup every 3 or 4 months, and I just add it to the back.
Kids are in a separate head, just make sure.
And that basically rejuvenates the soil again.
Just by topping off all the time?
I'm sorry?
Is there water tank in there?
I'm
Is
so,
there water in the tank when you're adding?
yeah. I just what I'll do is I'll bring it in, fill it up in the water real gently, and just kind of slowly pour it out.
All in place?
Yep.
Pretty well? Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So that's all the foreground I'm putting in. I don't, like I said, I'm not a big fan of foreground plants. They tend to be tough to work with sometimes.
We'll make notes for next year.
So the next step of this, oh, I'm going to get this one in there. Yeah, it might be tough.
Right there.
It might just be a dirt carpet.
Yeah.
That's actually in front of the rock, it's not in the crack.
I'm going to stuff it right down in that crevice there. Okay. All right. Next step is we got the foreground in. We have add a little bit more of the midground. This is another one of my favorite plants, the Starginy repens. Super easy plant, but I also hate it. I have a love-hate relationship with this plant. It is my canary in the coal mine. If you're low on nutrients, this plant sheds. It'll shed all of its leaves. Starginy repens,
So we're just turning to a stem.
it'll shed, like just the top is all you'll have left. Like it'll grow real well for about 2 or 3 months. And then if you start getting low on nutrients, the bottoms will start melting off. Whoops. It'll recover, but you're gonna have to fix your nutrients at that point, which sometimes can be kind of tricky because sometimes I don't know exactly why it did that. That's why I call it a canary in the coal mine, because it's not always consistent.
What was it called again? Sorry.
Starginy repens. It's a very, very popular mid-ground plant that a lot of aquascapers use.
Are you ready? Yes. Dante Wilder. Charles Steele.
Take them off. I was just doing that stuff. I didn't really take that quick. You can take them off, I'm sorry.
You didn't do John.
That's fine. I mean, I can take my kids.
So I'll draw another.
Yeah, take that one. It wasn't very good, so.
Next time.
I didn't get picked.
We're on two so far.
You've only said two. You only said two minutes. Calm down.
Actually, I don't like this one there. Too big. All right, so the way I'm planting this is kind of a progressive height. Stargine tends to stay pretty low, so I'll keep it in the front. Yeah. The crypt that I put back there is a Cryptocarina wendetii brown, and that one gets pretty good size. It's a mid-ground plant that'll get about maybe that tall. And so we're going from low and kind of progressively going up. Right now, it looks very small, but as it starts to get larger, it'll start getting a little bit more height and really fill out that section of the tank.
Like in that back right
Got Dante Wilder, Matt Beasley, Wally Calvert, Chris Dove, Michael Ford, Carolyn M. Carlin, Megan Longbeer, Elena Baker Nye, Luke Knoll, and Nathan.
No, he's not excited. No, I'm not.
Daddy, $4.
Really?
You think I'm giving it
You
to
ain't
you
even got
away?
to that point yet.
I think there's a lawn to be mowed, or maybe
This is how I am all the time. These guys are used to me being abused.
yeah.
Balin, is he taking off the, like, short end?
Yes.
Is that
It's better for the plants because what I do is I'll strip the bottom layers of the leaves and then plant it. And the reason I do that is because the leaves, if they're buried, they start to rot. And you want to prevent it from rotting, so I,
So if you're planting and you have a plant with really long roots, especially in a tank that already has water, can you trim your roots?
I trim my roots. Yep.
How far?
So I trim it so that there's only about maybe half an inch left. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to work with. All right, so that's.
Does that stimulate growth concerns? Because in my mind, it just seems like you trim them, and they're just gonna peak out.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do. You want to encourage new growth at that point. Okay.
I have a question. Can you put a decent sized fern in the back, like on the back, right there where the big opening is? Can you put like a pretty?
You could, but
Like, cause I have like a 10-inch fern. Could I ever do that if I have a 10-inch fern?
you could. It just you got to. So the other thing I emphasize when I'm planting is plant to the size of the tank. Don't get plants that are going to be so large that they're going to overwhelm a tank. So that's the key. Another one of my favorite plants. This is Hygrophila pinnatifida. Really cool plant, kind of a burgundy color on the top, on the bottom, kind of green on top, serrated leaves. Probably one of the easiest plants that I grow. This one's a special variety. This is Hygrophila ratnagiri. I'm sorry? Underwater.
I was told that you can't grow it in the water without CO2.
No, you can't. I have it in my shrimp. I have it in shrimp tanks, and it grows just fine in my shrimp tanks. Ah, crap. Too fast.
So the soil broke out, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So there's a trick to getting soil out of there. If you have a magnet will basically pull that soil out of there because it has iron in it, and it'll.
It's got enough iron to pull it up with the magnet.
Yep.
Oh my lord. He went a little fast and got
Yeah, I got too much. I washed out.
I'm glad you're getting to build. I was going to tell him if we both got picked, I was going to tell him to pick someone else. Because only one of us needs to do this.
Why? Because then I could teach
Because
you.
we don't need to both buy we don't need to both buy one of these.
You would.
So,
Okay.
planting to your side, so I'm going to show you this real quick. I have a 3.5 gallon dirty bowl.
Oh, there you
I
go.
put a sword in there. Well, the sword turned into 3 swords, and it's taking over the whole bowl.
Yeah.
Now I can't pull it out of the bowl. It's dirty.
Yep, exactly.
Is it okay if some of the soil comes through?
It is, but you can get a magnet to pull that stuff out.
Oh, you just said that.
So that plant you're planting right there.
Yep.
We bought that at an auction or a swap or something. And
Silent option.
they said it needed CO. But Andre told me to plant it at the top. So I shoved it into a rock
Yep.
at the top of that bowl. It's growing just fine.
Yeah.
It's now started taking off, but the roots have gone crazy.
It's a super easy plant. Pretty easy to grow. Very tolerant of a lot of conditions.
To be honest, there were just 2 ones left.
I think I'm originally from Springfield. I never had hair out here.
Oh, no.
Since I moved in St. Louis, hair out.
Some of the water, can be really tricky sometimes.
Springfield, Illinois border.
Nice thing about St. Louis, if you live in the city or the county, you get pretty good water. What is
St.
that
Louis
there?
border, I never used to have.
That is Hygrophila pinnatifida. It's a really, really cool plant. Probably one of my favorites.
So why have boosters become so much more popular in the last handful of years?
Primarily because of the market. It's really no other reason aside from that.
It's not a super plant for any reason?
No, it's just like Anubias. It grows just like Anubias.
What the, sorry, I didn't hear.
The boosts,
The juice, yeah.
I mean, they're no more special than an Anubias, the different varieties of Anubias.
Pyrophilia Japan.
Do you have any recommendations for high flow? I have a really high flow stream tank that I only have a couple native plants in, but I've thought about sticking 2 purchase plants in there.
We kind of shoved that.
Because the native plants are very seasonal, like I cannot keep them alive beyond
Yeah.
the summer.
That's for growing in.
Huh?
Yeah.
I'll have to,
Is
I'll have
that
to look at that.
Balin, what you're planting right now? Is that
Oh.
the hydro?
It's a Hygrophila, no, it's
Depends on which one.
Hygrophila tripetita?
Yeah, the Japan.
Yeah.
Oh, I have watercress in there now, and it grows like crazy.
That rainbow valve, or there's a sagit looks like it.
But my flow is, it's very, very high, like 800 gallons per hour flying.
Okay.
Lots of moss like flow too.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit of moss now that I've gotten rid of.
It should be cool either way. Even that, I'm saying it will be nice.
What are you guys gonna do with this piece? I'm gonna ask you.
Okay, so stem plants. I use a lot of different types. This is green. This one is kind of one that I absolutely love. And it's a true rotala. It actually stays a true green color. A lot of rotalas have a kind of a tinge of red. But this one actually is the one that will stay green. And what I'll do is I'll kind of normalize the sizes to start out. Okay.
And I see that you broke the ends
Chop
off
that
to
needle.
plant them.
Yeah.
That needle leaf.
So do you ever, those are the kind of plants when I was younger that would come in with bunches with the lead weight around it. You ever bunch those like that, or you just plant them and shove them?
I straighten the substrate because you want the nutrients to go straight to the plants.
And you're not breaking at any specific point in the plant, you can break anywhere, it's not gonna.
I just try to keep the sizes about the same. So like this one, it's about double the size, so I'll just break it in half and use that.
For the 4 gallons we're making, will the front be sand?
Depends on what you guys want to do. It's totally up.
Your front should be sand, because you're not gonna be able to, like you said, it's a lot of work to trim the front.
Yeah, actually, in the small tanks, I don't like having foregrounds because it's so small, and I got big hands, big fingers, fat fingers, so I can't get my.
Well, that's my problem is I end up then with like just the same size plants all over.
Yeah.
That's how my shrimp tanks are now, which they love, but I don't love as much.
That's why mine have all turned into cliffs on the bottom,
Uh-huh.
red root floaters on the top.
Now,
That's my shrimp tank now.
these are all pretty fast growers. They all grow really quickly, so they will fill in. Yay! And they will actually grow in pretty quickly. And then
Once again, the crepes you said.
I'm gonna use restaurant.
the stem plants, they'll set in pretty fast.
Is that, needle leaf down for the
No, it's not at all. I have decent amount of it at home. I also brought Java Firm Mini for you guys. That's a really cool one. It's a perfect size for the tank that you guys are going to be putting together.
Are we gonna be allowed to ask you throughout the competition?
Yeah, absolutely.
Foreground, background? Okay. With this cutthroat competition, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, you can see some of the veining on the Sirius stone down.
Yeah.
This is always what I set out to do, and then something else entirely happens.
But that's an aquascape. It
Well,
changes.
yes, yes.
I tried to make the tank look nice, and then I had
Okay.
one big.
All right.
My problem is a year later, I feel bad like cutting it all down.
Oh man, I am super aggressive about cutting. Like when I prune, what I do is usually in the stem plants, I will prune it down to about an inch of the substrate. And then I look, what it does is when you prune it that far down, you can see gaps. Because when you first plant it, you can't tell. Everything's kind of filled in. But when you prune it down that far down, you see gaps and you replant the tops. And so you can really fill a scape in. That's how you get the really full effect of an aquascape is just basically replanting, pruning, replanting, pruning, replanting.
You gotta be okay with that awkward teenage years between trimmings where it's gonna
Yeah,
look funky.
it's gonna look a little weird. So this came straight out of my tank.
What's that one called? That really thin one?
This one?
Yes.
That is Myrophilium mutagrescens. It's a very kind of a cool variety of plant. So you'll notice that a lot of these are really fast growers.
And this that you're handling right now is,
This one is Rotala colorata, and it gets this really pretty pink and like really intense light. Okay. And so what I'm doing now is I have the green over there. I have this variety of plant, the Hygrophila pinnifida here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an accent of red right here.
Steve, you
sent some extras.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, so these are our selected speakers with the skate box.
So cool.
Short, might be a little bit.
Are you gonna help me?
Wow, you're braver than me. I have a 2 and 4-year-old. I almost thought I did not. If I knew it was a credit pick, it's like,
The 9-year-old wanted to go to grandma's house for the school picnic.
So you mentioned the
This is my aquascaping buddy.
I'm sorry?
You mentioned the aqua soil has a lot of iron in it earlier.
It does have enough, it does have iron in it, yeah.
So the iron help with the plants in any way, or is that just a byproduct?
pretty much nicer than me. All of my
I'm sorry.
Does the iron actually help plant growth in
Yeah,
any way?
absolutely does. Yeah, so iron's a critical component of plants. It's part of the photosynthetic pathway. And so it's absolutely critical in the plant's growth. You don't want too much. It can be toxic to the plants, but it also is it's also very critical for plant growth.
I saw in a fish store, one of the fish stores around here, they had a stone that was basically all iron oxide. And I didn't know, because I'm a geologist, so I'm like, oh wow, this rock's 2 million years old, I want that in my tank. But I wasn't sure if it would negatively affect.
No, it shouldn't. So the iron that's utilized by your plants it's in a different form, a different state. And so it'll take, it has to convert in the tank to a usable form. So you guys will notice, when I plant deep. This substrate base is about that deep, and I go the stems all the way down to the bottom. And
So do you do that mostly with your stem plants, or do you do that with all of the other plants as well?
No, just the stem plants.
Okay.
Because they'll root out from everything that's.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there a trick for cleaning up the escaped aqua soil that's on top of the sand?
Yes.
To that point?
Yes. Magnet will actually pick it up. Yeah. And I have to do that a lot because I have quarries that like to kick stuff. And the mono shrimp, they are notorious for that.
It's been a while since I've had fresh water, but I have salt water right now, and I have horseshoe crab. All he does is just bury everything.
I have a full-sized Faxodes virilis viral crayfish, and so I've got like the bases from plant pots, the shallow ones, with the aqua soil inside up on bricks. With the plants that he can't climb, or so far hasn't climbed to the figure out. Right. No, sooner or later I'm going to come in and it's going to be like, well, we mowed the lawn.
Yeah.
But until then.
Bill, for root tabs, do you ever explore like any kind of DIY, like get your own?
I have, yeah. I use the other thing I do a lot of is I garden a lot.
Yeah.
And I use seed bombs, which is basically taking clay, powdered clay, and adding seeds into like a little seed ball.
Native fish will be starting soon. That's what, did you come looking for native fish? They'll be starting soon. A little bit of.
All right, I'm almost there.
Different neighborhoods, confused with stuff.
All right.
So do you tend to try to go for like complete coverage of the back wall with plants?
Yep. It's like I said, I will plant a tank up to between 75 to 90% full. And I mean, literally where I can't see the substrate or see the base. But I mean, with this tank,
So when this tank is, like, when these nano tanks in this tank is set up,
Yep.
you got at least 30 days of daily water changes.
with this substrate, you won't need to as much. It's not, yeah, the contrasoil doesn't leach as bad.
And this is the Mario.
Yeah, this is myrophyllum.
That's also a pretty fast growth.
It's super fast grower. So what I have here was about 2 days of growth. Yep.
The DIY root tabs, it's something like, because I'm wondering if it's too presumptuous to take like your own gel cast, fill it with like Osmocote, like you use in the garden, and then throwing that in your tank.
So there are people who have Osmocote for their root tabs. I don't like it because of that. the little roots, the little gel caps go all over the place. And then once it breaks apart, those little things go all over the place. Whoops.
There's a guy in Massey who makes his own and sells them. I think he's doing Talk Today. He like buys Andre.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's hardcore.
So in terms of your DIY, because you're talking about your little bombs. That's a generator for the garden. What about your scape?
So for my scape, I actually do the same thing with the seat bombs, but they're real small. They're like the size of it's like a Tic Tac.
So what do you use in terms of like holding the bombs? I guess instead of gel caps.
I just go straight into the substrate. And so what it does is it'll break down into the substrate.
If you're doing that, do you need to add soil?
I'm sorry?
How you were talking about sprinkling soil on the back. If you're using like nice, especially DIY like root tubs, do you ever need to add soil?
I mean, you can, but I don't necessarily.
I wouldn't. I just don't want to change the height of my tank or get down to the plants if I have too much.
Well, like he was saying, though, the more you pull plants out, you're pulling dirt out.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
Here and there.
Okay, so this is Hygrophila bihar. It's a really cool plant, and if you look at this serrated edge also, this is a stupid fast growing plant.
Will it get tall or like robust? Holy smokes, same plant? Wow.
I mean, it's growing up and out of my tank.
Will it grow above your lights?
It has. It grows immersed. I've had it grow immersed in my tanks. It's a really cool plant.
On my big tank, I have lights. I raise them lower based on what I need to do. I have one that sits on like a higher, and then I have an office guy that lets me down as I go through. The fish don't like it when I get two lights going, so yeah. See, my problem is also, I don't even have.
Yeah, pretty close. Yep. I am almost there.
A couple $100 on plants.
Couple more plants and
Hey, very nice.
yeah, I usually get about 3 hours.
My biggest problem when I did like my bowls, the thing I wish I would have done is pre-soak my wood.
Yeah. Yep. I have a lot of problems with that.
It was front center for 3 years. I finally got so covered in green. I was like, okay, he's going back.
Don't think so. I don't think I've ever used that before.
I buy it here and there.
Grapewood's too soft. It has a tendency to kind of breaks down too quickly.
Putting it in the bowl, the reason I read like that was because I have wood in it, so I kind of got it for a snack and it's cheaper. I got it ready to close out. So it's kind of a snack on my plate. But it's a big cage.
Move the tank aside.
Yep.
It's 11:35, we got our next native.
We are done.
How are we moving the tank to the side? Are we moving the whole table to the side?
Okay, there we go. Done.
So when you do the judging and the critique, is the tank waterless? Or like this amount of water, or are we gonna put water in the tanks?
So I think the plan was to put water in it because I wanted you guys to be able to see what the tanks look like.
We do have a nice long python hose that we can run out and put on the tank. So we can do that when we get.
Okay.
Where do you think this was? If I want to find that on Amazon,
This is just lead fishing weight.
As we get set up here, you guys have been
That's lead
randomly
fishing
assigned to tanks, you can move your tank. I just put it out there so everybody has a location for it. As you get started, a couple of things to think about. You would like to time lapse to see how your guys' tanks
Excuse me.
are just please leave that piece of the
Why I was just like,
Yeah, yeah.
tank back to the same spots.
are these staying in here or are they going out?
I think they're going out. I'm not actually sure what the plan is. I was.
Other than that, you guys can go start getting out there and start gathering supplies. We will be moving some plants and rocks out to a
like power core, solid core, whatever.
I do solid core.
Okay.
And then I try to get some that are like different sizes.
Yeah.
Some are like I don't remember exactly what